The movie opens in a lively place called Drift Village, where excitement fills the air as a car race is about to take place. Colorful banners wave in the breeze, and the sounds of engines revving echo through the streets. Villagers gather eagerly with anticipation for the thrilling event. Meanwhile, in another part of the village, a large crowd gathers around a garage owned by a young automotive engineer, Fang Xiang. He enthusiastically explains the features of his car designed for racing. First, he demonstrates an ejection system that allows the driver to exit the car by pressing an emergency button. Next, he showcases a unique feature where the driver's scream can actually make the car go faster. Finally, he introduces a separation design that allows the front and back of the car to split apart. However, the villagers find his inventions impractical and soon lose interest, leaving his demonstration. After all the spectators leave, Fang decides to take his business elsewhere, as he is struggling to keep his garage afloat. During the race, various participants are introduced, originating from different regions, including Drift Village. Among them are the village chief, Ma Fufeng, known as the Windmill King, and his student, Ma Tashui, who are both competing against each other. As the race kicks off, the participants speed down an unpaved track while a commentator provides coverage from a nearby hill, using devices like a handheld telescope and drones. Throughout the race, many cars and drivers face challenges that take them out of the competition. Some crash into the water, others flip over, and some encounter accidents in the tunnel. Tashui navigates through the tunnel just as an accident happens, with Fufeng close behind. Finding himself trapped, Fufeng decides to climb the walls of the tunnel to get out. Although he makes it through, he ends up landing upside down, causing concern among the onlookers. This incident allows Tashui to claim victory in the race. After his win, he announces his decision to quit racing in the village and embarks on a journey to explore the wider world of racing. A year later, Fang is seen discussing matters with a scrap car's owner named Zhang, intending to hand over his scrap car. However, instead of receiving the car, he presents Fang with a legal notice demanding payment for his past debts. He explains that a prestigious alliance of top racers known as the Global Group is targeting Fang, and he wants to protect himself by ensuring that Fang settles all his debts without incurring any new ones. As the workers unload his truck, he receives a call informing him that an inspection team from the Automobile Federation is coming to evaluate the village's eligibility to host the World Rally Championship. Later, after touring the village, the inspectors tell the village chief that everything meets the required standards. However, they explain that the final decision rests with the organizing committee, so they will need to wait for the results. As the inspectors prepare to leave, the chief inquires about their chances of being selected. The inspectors mention that the committee has another option, the Global Group, whose tracks are more professional than theirs, which creates a tense moment for the chief. Following this, the villagers prepare for the upcoming Hurricane Championship, when the president of the Global Group arrives to propose a deal. As they compete for the chance to host the World Rally Championship, he tells the chief that if his participants win the Hurricane Championship, the villagers will need to sell the operating rights of the village. If his team loses, he promises to drop the competition for hosting rights. He then introduces Tashui as his participant and states that if half of the villagers agree to the deal, it will be finalized. If they want to proceed, they should step forward, leave a thumbprint, and receive a cash prize. In just moments, half of the villagers accept the agreement, securing the deal. Later that night, the Global Group sends a woman to offer Fang a bribe of 500,000 wen to help settle his debts. In return, he must make small modifications to the cars of the other participants to slow them down, except for Tashui's. She mentions that if he performs the task well, he will receive even greater rewards beyond the initial amount. Hearing about the big rewards, he prepares the equipment that will slow down the car's performance while the garage door is shut. When Dage, one of Fang's friends, sees lights on inside, he alerts the whole village, claiming there is a thief in the garage. As the villagers rush over, He fires up a welding machine, blinding everyone with the bright light. Finally, the championship day arrives, and the racers are using the modified car that Fang has created to slow down their performance. As the race begins, many start to experience problems, with some losing control of the steering and others struggling to start their engines. One racer calls him for help in the middle of the race. When Fang jumps in, the engine roars to life, and the car speeds off uncontrollably down a hill, while he screams the entire way. As Tashui approaches the finish line with no one behind him, Fang suddenly zooms past and crosses first, winning the championship. After the race, Tashui tries to confront him, but he remains in the car, feeling sick from the ride, leaving Tashui to storm away in frustration. Later, as Fang relaxes in his garage, a woman from the global group approaches and tells him he does not deserve the cash prize. She not only takes the bag of money hidden in the trunk, but also removes a camera she secretly placed in the garage. That night, he sits with the villagers to celebrate his win, but his mind keeps drifting back to the cash prize from the global group. Following the celebration, he spends time with his childhood crush, Ma Li, praising Tashui, whom he calls his brother, for his racing skills and how he won that day, attributing it to luck. Meanwhile, outside the global group's building, Tashui walks by and overhears a conversation between Mr. Go and his assistant. Mr. Go is venting his frustration over losing the race and having to give up the rights to host future events. Suddenly, Tashui bursts in, accusing Mr. Go of cheating him by not fulfilling his promise regarding operating rights. He reveals that he joined forces with him under the condition of developing the village, and in his anger, he lashes out at Mr. Governor. Security quickly rushes in and captures Tashui, while Mr. Gu injures Tashui's hand in the process. Early the next morning, the assistant and the woman from the global group arrive in the village and announce that Tashui bribed Fang with cash. They show a clip from the hidden camera as evidence, shocking the villagers. The global group then demands a rematch to make the race fair. Li and the villagers become angry with him for his unethical behavior and protest outside his garage. Dage confronts him but stays quiet when he sees the situation is so dire. Feeling too ashamed to face the villagers, he decides to leave the village. As rain pours down, he stands in front of the chief's house, not acknowledging anyone, and apologizes for his wrongdoing. He expresses gratitude for the chief's constant support and leaves. The next day, he gets ready to leave the village, with Dage helping him pack. He hopes to see Li before he goes, but she does not come to visit. Instead, she watches him secretly from her window as he drives away. Just a few minutes into his drive, he spots Tashui on the road. In a fit of anger, he confronts Tashui about the bribery, but Tashui explains that the global group is manipulating both of them, and that the company does not want the village to prosper, fearing it will lose their funding. Realizing the truth, he wants to talk to the village chief, but Tashui stops him, saying that after everything that happened, no one will believe them. Instead, Tashui suggests they must win the next race to prove themselves, offering to train him since Tashui's hand is broken. However, he is reluctant. Tashui insists on a week of training, but he drives off, feeling conflicted. As he remembers the time spent in the village with his loved ones, he realizes he cannot waste the chance to do something good for them. He turns back, determined to prove that no matter how much Tashui trains him, he is not meant to be a racer. They soon begin their training sessions, but Fang shows little interest in the training. Tashui realizes that Fang's motion sickness is their biggest challenge and suggests a technique called wind technique as a solution. He explains that their village has a secret method called the hurricane technique, which consists of two parts: speed technique and wind technique. To get the book on the hurricane technique, the trio visits the chief's house, bringing a pig's head and a special liquor as gifts. After hours of trying to convince the chief, he still does not appear, so Fang asks him to at least leave a note if he refuses to meet. Moments later, the chief tosses a piece of paper out the window that simply says "scram," meaning to roll. They quickly decipher the chief's message and practice rolling to help Fang with his motion sickness. To celebrate their first success, they go to a funeral where they encounter the villagers, who call them traitors and losers. Even the chief tells them they cannot win the race, which ignites a strong sense of determination within them. Later, Lee arrives at the garage and hands them the book on the hurricane technique before quickly leaving. The trio dives into reading the book and begins practicing the techniques outlined in it. They first tie Fang to a swing and spin him while he tries to do embroidery at the same time. For the second technique, they use a winnowing machine to catch bugs, ensuring not to miss a single one. The third technique requires Fang to play with a rubber band while also playing table tennis. Finally, the fourth technique involves listening carefully and identifying sounds while blindfolded, helping him predict and prepare for the race environment. Meanwhile, Mr. Go is planning to use a carbon dioxide technique to create explosions without leaving any trace. He intends to set up blasts at various points on the racetrack to create obstacles for the competitors as they pass through. On the other hand, Fang and his team continue practicing their techniques while also working on building their own racing car. As they are focused on their tasks, they notice a former racer named Taiki, who has been hired by the global group as one of their participants, arrives in the village. They quickly rush inside to track his driving data. Dage uses headphones and an antenna as a sound tracker to listen to Taiki's conversations, but picks up nothing useful. The trio then deploys a drone to capture Taiki's driving skills at different sections of the track and shares their findings with Fang. After analyzing Taiki's performance, Fang decides to take his own truck to measure his speed against Taiki's. However, during the trial, he gets distracted when he sees Lee spying on him. Fang pretends to be unconscious after crashing into a tree, which alarms Lee. In panic, she agrees to everything he says, including the idea of being in a relationship, but soon realizes it is all an act. Back in the garage, Dage finishes building a brand new racing car, and Fang takes it out for a test drive. As he exceeds the competitor's speeds, he crashes, injuring himself and damaging the car. Later that night, he laments losing the chief's trust, but Dage reassures him that the chief has not given up on them. He reveals that the chief said they could use a firecracker to signal if they needed anything. Moments later, the chief responds with a firecracker featuring a pig as a symbol. They decode the chief's message and head to a sty to retrieve a race car engine. The next morning, as they worry about other car parts, the villagers come to help, offering them pieces of the car right in front of their garage. With all the necessary parts in front of them, they begin modifying another car for the race. Alongside, Fang masters all the hurricane techniques. On race day, Lee goes live, questioning random people in the crowd. She spots a man from the global group who is associated with the carbon dioxide fracturing technique and notices something suspicious in his hand, but decides not to investigate further. The man then slips away from the crowd and secretly attaches a device to Fang's car before sneaking into a nearby van. As the race starts, Fang and Taiki engage in a fierce competition. Meanwhile, Mr. Gu and his assistant urge Taiki to create distance between himself and Fang so they can execute their plan. Despite this, Fang puts up a strong fight. However, when Taiki enters a tunnel, Mr. Gu triggers an explosion in an attempt to trap Fang inside. Using the fourth technique of the hurricane method, which involves listening carefully and identifying sounds while blindfolded, Fang navigates the tunnel safely. In the end, they approach the finish line and Fang crosses it first, winning the race. As everyone rushes to the finish line, Lee hears a voice coming from the van where Mr. Go and his team are hiding. He shouts out, and Dage quickly uses his sound tracker to amplify the voice through the speakers, making sure everyone hears it. After the revelation, Mr. Gu is then handed over to public security authorities for his crimes, facing legal consequences for his actions. After the race, the village is selected as the host location for the World Rally Championship, Elsewhere, a villager playfully pushes Fang closer to Li, leading them to share a kiss, marking a joyful moment as the village celebrates their newfound success.